And I'm so thrilled to have everybody here. This is our first go at a virtual startup grind. We're so used to having everybody out and meeting at Cowork Chilliwack. But with the new situation, Startup Grind HQ has adapted and they've moved virtual. So it's been really neat to take advantage of that. And as you know, Startup Grind is all about education, inspiration, and connection. And there are now more than 600 chapters worldwide, and Chilliwack is one of them. Our values: make friends, give first, help others. And that's never been more appropriate than right now in this situation, especially as we're all isolated. So do reach out to those in your circles and offer help. We've had 3 wonderful sponsors for 2020, the Chilliwack Economic Partners, Chilliwack Innovation Network, and the University of the Fraser Valley. And they are continuing to sponsor as we move to virtual. Our partners, Cowork Chilliwack, Currency, Wisebox, Around Chilliwack, and Party Tree Events have been very helpful in putting these events on and continue to do so. And if you are putting anything on social media, I guess you can't take photos, but you could do screen captures or take a photo of your screen these days. Use the hashtag #StartupGrind. And our guest is Andrea Welling. She's Futurpreneur Canada's Regional Director for the BC and Yukon. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's exciting to be here today.
We began to talk in January, and then we had to move a February meeting, and then we put it to March. And who knew that what was between us and actually sitting down to have this conversation? It's incredible what we've all gone through in obviously our region and around the world. But thanks for persevering and being our first virtual guest.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to see how everyone's pivoting toward being still connecting and using creativity and innovation to do it.
Yeah, we'll get to the Futurpreneur story, but I want to start first by introducing you and where you came from and both your educational and entrepreneurial background. So you were born in Calgary, I understand?
Yes. So was born sort of southern Alberta, lived in Calgary with my family, but also did travel, lived in the UK as a child and also northern BC. My father was managing oil and gas plants. So definitely had a chance to experience a lot of diversity early in my life and experience many different peoples and cultures and seeing them in lots of different economic circumstances and activities. So it was a very interesting way to grow up. So.
And you actually spent some of your school time in, I believe, England and Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was in different schools in those different areas, one near Aberdeen and one in Purley in Surrey, and those were different. So there was a public school and private schools there, and of course I ended up with a Scottish accent at one point, and so that was very interesting times.
Were you excited to make that move, or was it like, what age were you when that happened?
Well, I was really like in grade 1. It was sort of grade 1 to like grade 3 or grade 4. So I had no idea what adventures were coming. And then basically my parents bought, like a white Volkswagen van. And then we just started traveling all around the UK and visited all kinds of, cathedrals and castles and saw a whole bunch of the world. So yeah, I had no idea, I hadn't been out of, really out of Calgary as a young child. Maybe got to the Stampede, and that was about it. So
I imagine that would be easier than, say, 13 when you're fully in your circle and we're going halfway around the world. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, when I was 13, that's when we moved up to northern BC to Dawson Creek.
Okay.
And that was a tougher move, that's for sure, because I was a younger teenager and had to leave my friends. And so, yeah, I had learned to be adaptable, but yeah, definitely the earlier travels was easier. We were more portable.
And then you went to school at the University of Calgary. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So at that time, I was interested to be a lawyer, and I'd been studying up until that point, and so studied political science and was very interested in politics, economic development, and then became very interested in politics around people and the environment. And growing up in Alberta, the politics run quite strongly in each direction. So initially I was much more I had a conservative lean, and then I became much more interested in other side of the political spectrum. So it was very, very interesting times. I did a co-op program and actually worked for Indian and Northern Affairs, their litigation support branch, Parks Canada, and also in Taiwan, in Taipei, with
Wow.
the National Trade Office. So I really got an opportunity to experience sort of international trade and the federal government. But I was also a little unsure about law. I wasn't sure that it was the best place for me. I think I was worried it was going to be a little too adversarial and not the easiest place to be a woman. And heard some stories that kind of made me a little nervous. And I became very interested in also in advocacy around women and around the environment. So I decided to pursue a graduate degree, and that's what brought me out to British Columbia.
Okay. And you did that at Simon Fraser?
Yeah, so I did women's studies at Simon Fraser University and was studying politics and economics with Marjorie Cohen at the time. And during those studies, really got interested in local economic development. So was starting to really learn about local food security and what it meant for us to really be creating that locally, and also in the face of globalization. So you may remember some of those. There was some big protests around globalization.
Right.
In Seattle, and I was definitely part of that movement saying, hey, what about this globalization? What does it mean for people on the planet? And was concerned at that time and did my academic studies in that regard. So
Do you think some of your early travels and getting a bigger picture of the world influenced where you were going, and even your father's role in oil and gas and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely obviously I saw lots of different kinds of poverty, but also a lot of people very wealthy. So I really saw the gap between the rich and the poor, and got to see a little bit more where different people come from and different cultures. And, I think in terms of that growing up life, I think, my father's work with the environment and with Shell, I also was when I was more of a teenager, young adult, I was also asking him a lot of tough questions about that. And, he's actually become a big proponent of the environment himself. But it was definitely something that became quite a contrast at one point of some of my beliefs. But he was always very supportive of that, but it definitely saw some big oil and gas plants when they lived in Oman, out in the desert, and out in some of the parts in England and Scotland, and sometimes those were quite industrial. So seeing the impact on the environment definitely had an impact on me. So.
And so with taking women's studies and economic development, where did you see yourself going at that point?
Well, I was encouraged to continue to do a PhD after my master's, but honestly, I felt like I'd been doing studies for a long time. And I felt like I needed some real life experience and I needed something new, that if I was going to do that, to speak of what was my area of expertise. And I had been interviewing women organic farmers. My MA thesis was around food security, both global and local, and how women were making a difference as farmers in the Fraser Valley and the whole province of British Columbia. And we had moved out to Langley, and at the time there were really only vitamin stores. There weren't a lot of stores or suppliers selling organic produce and groceries. And through my studies, there was this opportunity. It seemed like this opportunity to provide organic produce and offer that. And it was just sort of a leap. And I had no idea. I don't come from a family that is small business owners or entrepreneurs. And one of my partners, he had experience with some food and growing, but it was definitely a bit of an idealistic leap at the time. Wearing our rosy colored glasses, and we decided that it would be just an excellent opportunity to also, what about contributing to local food and local economic development? And so that's where we were coming from, also philosophically. So
well, they say if you know everything about starting a business, you probably won't start one. So that's probably the best place to start, is just to see a need and fill a need. And so you saw this opportunity and started an organic delivery business.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did that look like?
So basically in the beginning, we had a community of people that supported us. They lived in a co-housing community in Walnut Grove. And so they wanted to buy produce from us. And so basically we had an old yellow Volkswagen van this time. And we would drive that around, and we had a barn that someone had rented us because we didn't have a lot of money starting out. We just kind of bootstrapped it ourselves. And basically we would go around to the Fraser Valley. Some people might know, Glen Valley or the different farms in the region, and we would get, salad mix and lettuces and berries and fruit and all sorts of produce and groceries. And so we had a delivery bins system where people would get a certain amount of groceries every week through the blue bin. So we definitely made sure with the blue bins that there was not so much waste, and definitely building and creating that. So and eventually then people also wanted eggs, and they wanted milk, and then they wanted cheese, and then they wanted cereal. And so we just kept growing the offering, and eventually that allowed us to purchase some nicer vehicles and coolers, and hiring more staff, and started to become a slightly larger small business.
Right. And so this was about 20 years ago. You're talking right around the 2000. And what you're describing is a modern day subscription service, which is pretty normal, but at that point, pretty foreign. How did you deal with like recurring payments on getting people set up? All of those things were not as plug and play as it is today.
No, absolutely. I mean, that was even before really you even had the handheld Visa machines. So we were still doing check and cash and having to kind of chase people for money. And so eventually we moved to that, but I remember having to do a little bit of chasing money and debt collection, this kind of thing. And eventually we got there, and same with the delivery service itself. We had a programmer who was working on an e-commerce system, but it was before there was anything that was plug and play. We were trying to create something. And so it was definitely more complicated than we needed, but we're up for the challenge. I was a little younger too, which helped.
Right. And during this time, you're starting a family as well, like trying to balance all of this. Talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely partway through there, I decided it was a good time to have a family. And so had my kids who are now, 13 and 16, but they were little at that time. And it was a great business in that sense that it fed us so well. It was feeding us such great food and produce, and it was really a great opportunity for us to kind of build a family and feed them well. But it definitely was a lot of work. Absolutely. I think we had no idea how much work it would be to start a small business and to do that from scratch, and to really not really know what we were doing. We thought we had a few ideas and we implemented some of those, but a lot of it was what your clients wanted and what was needed and how we had to just make this happen. So
at the height of Ladybug Organics home delivery service, how many employees and how many vans running around? And
yeah, absolutely. So I would say at the height of sort of 2005, 2006, we were about $1 million in sales, and we had, I think it was 2 or 3 delivery vans. We had a warehouse that people could visit on the weekend and get produce, as well as deliver to clients, over 1,000 products, hundreds of customers throughout the Fraser Valley and in Vancouver. So, initially when we hired someone, we just met someone at an event and said, hey, we'll hire you. And then eventually we actually had to have a process for hiring people to make sure we're hiring good people. So I think we had up to 8, 9 people, as well as ourselves, and like an office manager and a couple of delivery drivers, and then people packing produce into bins. So it definitely grew to be a growing concern. And I think people really loved the local produce. I think that was really the highlight. And also at the time, because there wasn't a lot of organic groceries or produce being offered, we filled this niche. We filled this need in that community. So that really benefited us.
And that business went on to be acquired by Spuds, I believe.
Yeah, eventually sort of after sort of another 5 years, we eventually sold that to Spud. I think basically with that business, as many people might discover in a food business, is we had a lot of sales, but we did struggle with the profitability and making it also financially and personally sustainable. It was challenging that way. And having a partner, when you have an equal co-partner who's also a life partner, we had different visions. And this is something in the work that I've done now, what I'm passionate about. I'm really passionate about making sure things around partnerships and relationships are really well worked out, because that was challenging. But eventually we did sell it, and it was something where it needed to get bigger or smaller, and we did not have enough mentorship to know how to do that. That's how I explain it. So it was successful, and also I think it felt like a bit of a failure too, all at the same time.
So
yeah.
Midway through that, you mentioned having kids. You started something called MomCoach, where you're doing personal training, women's coaching, and fitness instructing. Tell us about that adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had this wonderful neighbor who was starting a corporate coaching business, and I started working with her. And at the time, I would have neighbors who would come to me and ask me for questions and to help them with their problems. And so I kind of felt like, oh, maybe this is something I could be doing. Lifestyle coaching, people are interested in this. I was also quite active. We had quite an active business, and I was also quite interested in fitness and personal training. So together, I created a personal training and fitness business for new moms, and did classes with a Fit for Two contractor consultant, and helped new moms and babies do fitness together, and worked through the township of Langley, teaching some of their fitness classes there. So it was a great second business that was my own business. So it was obviously a lot smaller. It was self-employed. Right. But really be able to be home with my kids as well. So it was definitely great that way, and learned a lot, the whole other set of skills that were a bit different from what I was doing at Ladybug.
And how long did you do that for?
Oh, that was about 5 years. So I started when I had my son, and then did the personal training, and then did that for a couple of years. And basically, it kind of reached a point where if you want to really excel in personal training, you need to specialize. It really helps to be, an expert or really strong in kinesiology or rehab. And also a coaching business takes a lot of energy to generate clients. And so at some point it reached a point where I needed to decide what I wanted, and I wanted something that was more full-time. And that's when I kind of made a bit of a move into the nonprofit sector, and decided to still retain that entrepreneurial spirit and helping people with businesses, but I was still doing that business on the side. Like I've always kept that coaching on the side. And
you were doing, I believe, some volunteering kind of at the same time with, was it the YMCA or the YWCA?
Well, so basically I did some volunteering with the YWCA, was how I got into the nonprofit sector in Vancouver, and was helping with employment counseling. And then my the first sort of full-time nonprofit work was helping youth in business, and that was through the YMCA. So they're both separate organizations, but they sound awfully similar. So, so I was always trying to clarify that. But that's in downtown Vancouver, the Robert Lee YMCA. There's a beautiful facility there that I was then employed there for almost 8 years.
So it sounds like with your education, with the coaching piece, and also with your entrepreneurial experience, that you were in a perfect position to be mentoring these young entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, because I'd had that actual experience. So when it was talking about cash flow, it was, hey, how are we going to be sustainable? You need to know your sales. You need to know your expenses. What are the ratios in your industry? Have you talked to your accountant? So, and then with operations, people would kind of come in with the same rosy colored glasses I started with, and they'd say, oh, I'll have tons of sales, and this will be really straightforward. And it's like, well, what about your lease, and what about your staff, and how are you going to get products from your suppliers? And I was good at maintaining an excitement for their idea, but also asking them those more challenging questions so that they could be successful. Because if you don't think of these things, they'll kind of nibble up and bite you in different areas, rather unexpectedly. And so really that work was about having people be more prepared. And my goal was to have them be more prepared than we were Even though we were pretty resourceful, there was so much that I learned that I'll never forget.
This is probably putting you on the spot, but are there any particular entrepreneurial examples or business ideas that just stuck with you and that you saw someone take and run with during that time?
We had one fellow who ended up on Dragon's Den, and
Okay.
he had this app to connect people with restaurants, and he was really trying to promote, again, local businesses and local food, and he'd have theme nights, so different theme nights at these different restaurants, and kind of working with this app. And what was kind of interesting about his story was that he went on Dragon's Den and we didn't know the results. There's this gap.
Right.
And so in between that, he really like promoted that he was on Dragon's Den, and he did it and everything, and got people all excited, and we went to these different locations. He got people really engaged in his business and what he was doing. In the end, they didn't actually accept him because he hadn't have enough sales. He wasn't prepared enough. But I was always so impressed with how he really worked the business development, how he really took an opportunity and really helped it to amplify what he needed to create, even though the Dragons didn't sort of take him on. So that was one that always stuck out in my mind. And then another one that was really interesting was a woman who had come from the Philippines, and she had a son who was experiencing some challenges, some mental and physical challenges. And she had was a hairdresser in the Philippines, but she just had no idea anything about business in Canada. She was facing quite a few barriers. And so once we got her through the YMCA program and was really able to empower her through the business planning process, she ended up, was one of the first people out the gate, and she had her vehicle like all wrapped in this idea with her salon, and she's gonna have this mobile thing and work with seniors, and then suddenly, something she could really balance with her family. So I think more of my stories that really stick out were how we really help people who wouldn't normally have been entrepreneurs access entrepreneurship and become more empowered to be able to do that and feel like it's something they could create. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, that brings us to today, or I guess within the last year, you were recruited or applied for Futurpreneur Canada. So I'm going to pull up, share my screen here, and we'll go back to that presentation. Let me see if I can.
Yes, I had a neighbor who had been working at Futurpreneur, and she moved on to a new opportunity, and she referred me. So it was always such a big shout out to Paulina, who's with Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, who really helped this next opportunity. And also so grateful that I did start a year ago. I think it would have been a lot harder to be starting with Futurpreneur if it was this year. So
yeah, no kidding. Well, I've got your slides, and you've probably done this presentation a million times, but we're going to do it a little bit different. That I'm going to walk you through it, and you answer some questions. So what's the elevator pitch for Futurpreneur Canada?
We are fuel for young enterprise. So we help entrepreneurs 18 to 39 start businesses through coaching, mentoring, and loan financing. And we're really helping them to take whatever they're passionate about and be successful. So.
You passed the test. That was a very good pitch. But, and it's across Canada, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're a national organization, and it's so much fun to be part of something that's across our great country. When I did the entrepreneurship with the YMCA, it was focused on BC, but now I get to see what other people are doing in Quebec and in Ontario and Atlantic Canada, so that's really exciting. So 20 years ago, a number of different, I think, entrepreneurs themselves and some from a couple financial institutions said, hey, how come young people can't have access to financing? They weren't able to access loan financing because they didn't have any experience. And so that's how Futurpreneur was born. And really the idea is it's funded by the government. So Innovation, Science, Economic Development Canada, as well as a number of financial institutions said, hey, we want Futurpreneur to take some risks on entrepreneurship with young people. And so we're not foolish in the risks we take. We do check out the credit scores and make sure that they've got business plans and cash flow statements, but we are really open to helping a broad range from any industry, well, almost any industry, I should say. There's a few restrictions, but of young people that we want to help them move forward and take their passion and their dream and make that happen. And it's exciting to see so many young people want to be their own boss and to take their creativity and their talents and put that, enter the marketplace with all their courage. So
yeah, and here's some stats.
Yeah, here's some stats. So we have 3,000 volunteer mentors. We've supported many young business owners, and we also have a interactive business plan writer. So if you go on to Futurpreneur, you don't have to apply to our program. It's completely free. We've got a great template for a business plan and cash flow that you can use. That's right there. So
cool.
Yeah.
There's a eligibility, the money and mentorship piece, and I believe there's another program, but talk to me about this piece.
Absolutely. So basically, this is our mentorship piece, and this slide tells us a little bit about just the eligibility. So people need to be a Canadian citizen or permanent residents, and they need to be 0 to 12 months in full-time operations. So I generally call that startup. Now, sometimes people define startup a little differently. If you're in the investment sphere, you might call that seed. It's the time when they're sort of seeding the business. But we need that they've been doing some kind of sales and they're able to make some money within 6 to 12 months to be eligible for our program. And they can't be full-time students. They have to be just about graduating. We also help newcomers, and we also are looking to make sure that we're helping women start businesses as well as anyone who's underrepresented. We also have more funding for Indigenous entrepreneurs. We've got $3 million of funding from the government to help our Indigenous entrepreneurs as well.
So what does the pipeline look like of these young entrepreneurs? How are they finding Futurpreneur? Are they being referred, or a general web search? Or?
Yeah, I mean, as you'd expect, for more savvy younger people who are good at social media and the internet, they do find us through the internet and social media and social ads, and so that's definitely where they come from. But they also hear about us. They hear about us from family and friends, through events, and they also hear about us from our community partners. So we partner with Small Business BC, Women's Enterprise Center, Community Futures, as well as many nonprofit organizations, Diversity, ISS, Success, Chambers of Commerce, so innovation centers, and also people in the sort of economic development sphere. So we're basically spreading the word wherever we can, telling people about Futurpreneur. Because what's kind of unique about Futurpreneur, it's not like going to buy groceries every day, which you remember. It's kind of a point in time. It's like the person has to be 18 to 39, and they also have to be at that startup phase of their business. So it's got to be that there's a need suddenly. Suddenly they've started something, they've felt some success, but suddenly they need a lease. They need to buy some inventory. They need to pay for some marketing. And oh my goodness, I need some cash. And we're always like, don't just put it on your credit card. Maybe consider getting some loan financing at a really competitive rate. So that's really who we're looking to serve and help.
And so the startup program, so you can borrow. This is not investment or equity that's exchanging. It's an actual loan, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's an unsecured loan. We don't take any equity. It's character-based. We do check your credit, but it's up to 60,000. So we work with the BDC. So we secure the first 20, and they help us secure the second 40,000. And then rates on our market will be, we're at prime plus, I think it's 3.25. So, and a flexible 5-year repayment schedule, and interest-only payments in the first year. So whenever prime changes, we change with prime. So we can offer a really competitive rate. So the blended rate, I think right now is 8.43, but it's lower if you're just getting the 20. So yeah.
And for a commercial loan, that's a really good rate, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the mission of our organization, is to make it be as accessible and affordable and easy as possible for our entrepreneurs.
And the unsecured, that is amazing. So much of walking into a bank or a credit union, they're wanting you to basically put it all on the line for this venture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't ask for any assets or collateral, and we don't need to see prior business history. We do want to see your projections, and we do want to get a sense of what you're able to do and what your business has been doing. So we do require, and we do look at your credit. So that those are the couple of things that we do look at, but otherwise it's very accessible.
And you touched on it, but you said there's a network of 3,000 mentors. So when you enter this program, are you matched with a team or a single mentor, or how does that work?
It's a single mentor, but we have a whole pool of mentors from across the country. And basically, we like to find someone local who's in your industry. But if for some reason, say the match doesn't quite work, we can look to other mentors to help. And typically, those mentors will help our young people, our mentees, build confidence and help them with some hurdles. Typical ones might be like trying to negotiate a lease, which can be really intimidating. It could be about hiring their first person they've ever hired, and can I afford that, and can I do that? It may be pivoting in doing importing or exporting, or finding suppliers. So the mentors usually are usually quite flexible and offering their support where our young entrepreneur needs it. Wherever possible. And it really can help that person move to the next level, because you just shouldn't do it alone. I know that from myself, even having had business partners and a community of support. We didn't have mentorship, and the mentor can really help pave that way, show you things that you maybe would never think of, what you don't know. And it's a very powerful and a key, really one of the key pieces of our program. You can get financing from family and friends, and from financial institutions, but our 2-year mentorship program is really unique, and it's really to set them up for success. And entrepreneurship is risky. And so I'm just so passionate about that, all pieces of our program, but especially the mentorship. So,
And in your year of being with the organization and in BC and the Yukon, are there particular areas of concentration, certain industries, or is it all over the board?
We do have a couple of key industry areas. Food is one. We get delivery service businesses. We get product-based businesses. We get people doing catering, restaurants, cafes, food carts. So food is big. Fitness. So, and it kind of follows a little bit of my own path.
Yeah.
People wanting to be in the fitness industry in almost any sorts of ways. That could be blended with technology, could be brick and mortar. It could be, we have people now being really creative online and doing webinars. So food, fitness, and then also sort of like fashion and clothes are quite popular. Shoes and clothing and sort of online retail sales are the 3 largest industry areas. But really, our entrepreneurs can also come through technology. They can have a landscaping company. They could be doing manufacturing. They could be creating an app, or they could be, so it's very, very broad. The only things we do back breweries, but we don't back loans and lounges. The government doesn't want to put their money behind that, fortunately. Okay. And we don't back cannabis currently. So even though it's legal, it's not regulated enough for the government funders. So there are a few restrictions, and there is a little more detail to what I'm saying, but 98% of what you could imagine is very, very likely to be eligible. We more get people who are sometimes over 39. That's usually our more challenging eligibility piece, more so than industry. But we always encourage people to apply and to talk to us. And if people have any questions about that, we can set them up with our entrepreneur in residence or our business development managers.
So the startup program, you also have something, the side hustle, and it's I think it's self-explanatory. Smaller loans that you're doing something on the side.
Yeah,
Is this a new addition to the offering, or has it been around for a while?
yeah, a little bit of a new addition, but it's been around for a little while, and it's a great way for someone who has a job that they don't want to leave, but they have something on the side, and they need a bit of money to invest in that. And so it's the similar interest rates. It's a character-based unsecured loan, but we just need to see some evidence based on their disposable income from their employer to see if they can support the loan. And one example is we had a couple of fellows who developed some fun cards that you can play with at a party, these sort of flutter cards, I think, Flutter Creations. And so they developed these really cool cards, and it's become a real going concern. One of them might actually transition out of side hustle, but it was just starting to grow. And so it's kind of a bit of a more safer way someone can kind of dip their toes into entrepreneurship without having to, give up all their security.
So are you finding, like, given where we are right now, we're in the midst of a global pandemic and things have obviously changed. I know Premier Horgan mentioned, kind of as a footnote, but 400,000 people in BC have applied for assistance of some sort. Is this affecting your businesses in the Futurpreneur portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely some of our entrepreneurs are struggling. We had one that had a cafe that was really struggling, and we were able to what we've been able to do at Futurpreneur is provide a payment, a loan payment. And actually it started out as 1 month, it was 2 months, now it's 6 months, and we're covering all the principal, interest, and fee payments. So the government was able to give us some extra funding, $20.1 million to do that. And so we're able to help some of those entrepreneurs basically during this challenging time. Now, some of them have been really creative and have been pivoting and into other areas, but not everyone's able to do that. So the other thing we've just introduced, we've just basically launched this week, is our top-up loan. This is actually a new program for us, and it's for those who have been entrepreneurs with us and have already maybe paid off their loans, or they're currently in our program, and they want extra funding. They need an extra $5,000 or $10,000. So that is just beginning, and we're going to be working and supporting entrepreneurs that way. So we're really helping that way to help it make it a little easier for entrepreneurs at this challenging time. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned this already, but where would folks go to find this business plan tool?
Yeah, so normally Rock My Business Plan, it might be in your community live. We have Rock My Business Plan workshops, evenings or 1 to 2 day. And I know that our business development manager, Nikki, she's done those in Chilliwack and throughout the Fraser Valley. But now they're going to be going virtual. So that's coming up the end of May. So if people want to go on to Eventbrite, and they want to look up Rock My Business Plan, Futurpreneur Rock My Business Plan, they'll see that now we've got our webinar version, and we're getting that going just as you're doing this maiden voyage. Tim, we're going to be doing the same. It's going to be Chad, who's our entrepreneur in residence, and then a bunch of our other staff out across the country putting on that version. So we're really excited about that, and I think we'll be able to reach even more people. And it's really an opportunity for people who have never done a business plan to really get all the basics and just to get going with it, get moving with it, and then we can help them along the way with it. So,
well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to escape out of this and stop sharing so our faces get bigger than a postage stamp.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pop over here to the Q&A and see if there are any questions. There are none at this point, but let me go look at the chat. Nicola, she's all over it. Or Nicola, she put a link to the Eventbrite.
Thanks.
There, that's great.
That's great. Yeah, fabulous. That's wonderful. I don't feel quite skilled to do that and talk to you at the same time. That seems like a little too
Yep,
much.
I'm looking at a bunch of, I've been using Zoom, but not the webinar version. It's got a few more bells and whistle, but I think
Yeah,
everybody has been initiated into some form of video conferencing like
yeah,
never before. It's amazing, isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it's great.
So folks, do you have any questions for our guest, Andrea? What is the success rate of your clients? This is from Nettie. She's from the Chilliwack Economic Partners Corporation.
Absolutely. So we basically have an 85% repayment rate. So in terms of repayment of our loans, and so, obviously we're helping our entrepreneurs with that mentorship piece to be successful. So that's definitely great. Much better than if you're trying to do it alone. Your success rate is much less. So, and that the mentorship will help to keep you on track and also to pivot. So a lot of times businesses need to pivot to something different, and that's something also where the entrepreneurs, they can come back to their mentor, and they can also come back to us at any time. We're a community and entrepreneurship community. So
Hmm.
yeah.
On that note, Nick Adams, he's a local graphic designer and media expert. He's asking, is it possible to get connected with the support network without getting a loan or funding?
Yes, if you're wanting to talk to a business development manager or entrepreneur in residence, if you have questions about your business concept, you can definitely be in touch, and you can connect with us. There's a certain limit to how much coaching we can offer, but we can definitely provide a number of sessions to help you think about your concept and talk about your concept. So if you're interested in that, you might want to check out, we have a webinar that's every Tuesday. And through that, then you can also see about getting some additional sessions with our entrepreneurs in residence who are experts in small business and can really help see if this is the direction you want to go, if you're ready for that. And we're also, as an organization, we're really committed to making sure you're moving forward with your next best step. We would not push you into our program. We would not push you ever into a business. And so we're really here to help people with wherever they need to go. And it's same for me. Right when COVID started, I had a bunch of different people from different webinars just asking about resources. And so, it's only, there's a limit to how much I can handle. I can't take on the whole world, obviously. But if you have a question, you want to email me something, if you're wondering, please do. We're here for you. So.
Anonymous attendee, I think actually if you want to stay anonymous, that's fine. But if you hover, I think, over your name in the chat, you can actually click on it and rename yourself. Anyways, anonymous attendee asks, curious what places you refer the 40+ crowd to. Is there a mirrored program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we often refer to, Women's Enterprise Center, we have a great connection with them, and then also with Community Futures. So in terms of the lending. And then if someone's working on their concept, then we usually refer to Small Business BC. They've got great advisors. So those would probably be the three main ones. And then depending on the industry, there are different accelerator programs. There also are newcomer programs. So depending on the needs of that person, we may direct them to a longer, like an EI self-employment program, or something that might be a little bit more specialized in their industry, or what their questions are about.
Yeah, you mentioned Community Futures. I was curious how that works. It sounds like it's everybody kind of works together, and it's not so much competitive as everybody just helping entrepreneurship.
Yeah, we definitely collaborate, and we focus on the 18 to 39, and they definitely will then refer those types of clients to us. And if the clients need additional support and the additional mentorship of our program and are just not as prepared, then Futurpreneur is a great option. And of course, we refer to them. So if we are in their communities, we have people that we encounter who we can't serve, then we definitely want to make sure that those people, have a good connection. So Community Futures is someone that a partnership. We go to their conferences, they know about us, we know about them, and we have a really strong relationship. So really, and I'm still working on that. So being relatively new this year, I'm still forging relationships with some of the different Community Futures reps. So
excellent. Well, and speaking of forming relationships, it looks like Nettie, she is an economic development director at SEPCO.
yeah,
She would like to look at partnerships. So I see Nicola
absolutely.
has put your email there. So expect some communication there. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm excited about that.
Well, the questions are currently empty, going once, going twice. Any more questions? Well, we kept it to under an hour. We appear to be online and recording, and there appears to be actual people watching. So I think I would call this a success.
Absolutely. It's been
Yes.
really fun, Tim. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go back to my keynote. I just have some finishing slides here. 1 second.
Sure.
I will put your contact info up.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, you can email is great. Is a great way to be in touch. And if you want to be directed to our startup loan program, or you want to talk to someone about your concept, or you're just curious about entrepreneurship and what we do, just feel free to email me anytime. And that's a great way for us to get started with a dialogue. And then I can work with you, or I can also point you in the right direction. So
Excellent.
excited to be in touch with whoever's interested. This is the right time for them. And also please refer to family and friends. You might have a niece or a nephew or a friend or a cousin, or who knows, and this might just be the right opportunity for them when they get their business going. So feel free to share us far and wide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for sharing.
Yes.
Let's give a virtual clap. Usually there's a crowd of people, but I imagine they're all whooping from home. There we go. They're raising hands in the chat, which is awesome.